Hey boys and girls, Board Now back with you. On this video I will be talking about the third episode of the first season of Spides. So welcome along, thanks for listening, and I'm going to get straight into the episode, so full spoilers as always. This is not as good as the first two, I don't think. We get more like the overall like plot and mystery, but it's a bit more soapy, I think, this one, and it's a bit more, I think it's just a bit more like just character stuff, which is just like in the wheels, which you don't necessarily need. It's kind of the weird wacky sci-fi stuff, which I think is the best part of the show, which we get a little bit of, but not enough. I mean, in this one we get more into the whole Russian mobster like conspiracy type plot. We get like this appearance by this character who's like the son of the Russian mobster, the one who's currently in prison. And we get this whole thing where he's trying to move away from selling the other drugs and trying to get into bliss, because that is the hot drug on the street. So we have this whole thing where he's saying, well, my old man, he's just an old man, he's behind the times. Bliss is what the kids want, so that's what I'm going to try and deliver them. And I should point out that the actor playing him looks like the least intimidating character. You know, he clearly doesn't strike me as someone who's going to be like in a mob or something like that. He just looks like one of these like kind of pansy like male models sort of thing. The way he's dressed, he has absolutely no presence. He's not intimidating at all. But that's kind of the deal. So he, even though he's advised not to by you know the other members of the mafia, he sets up a deal anyway. He sets up the deal with the guy who we've seen working with Sarah, who, as we find out in this episode, is Nora's like identical twin sister. So he's kind of working both ends, it seems. He has like a vested interest in making sure that Bliss stays on the streets, it seems. Or it appears maybe there's still going to be a swerve on that. But he's also interested in, because of what he's doing with Sarah, like eliminating all these patients who have been on the drug, then he's also interested in pinning those murders on the Russians, even though it wasn't. Because, of course, a few days back when Sarah was leaving that crime scene, obviously they tried to pin it on the Russians. But anyway, he and a couple of other people meet with like the Russian boy toy, as I'll call him, and they seem intent on doing a deal, and it all seems about to go down. But then at the end of the scene, that they sort of grab onto the guy and they sort of slam his head into like this ice trunk, but I think it's meant to have Bliss in it or some sort of drug, so they're obviously doing something to alter him and affect him in some way. I don't know if they're going to try and get him working for them but yeah, the Russian mob stuff is just really boring. It doesn't interest me at all. It doesn't add anything. As I said, I come to the show for the kind of trippy, silly kind of sci-fi sort of hijinks. But yeah, a big part of the episode is finding out that Nora does in fact have this identical sister called Sarah, and this starts because Peter starts asking questions. He asks the doctor at the institute, and she's a bit suspicious. She said, "Oh, you seem to be asking a lot of questions." And there's a little line from her where she says, "Don't make me regret my decision. I picked you for a particular reason." So I think they're implying with Peter then he did maybe act in bad faith and has been doing some shady shit as part of the kind of manipulating Nora and the whole thing. But then he now maybe regrets that, and he was kind of roped into it because he's been given this sort of internship or placement, whatever you want to say, by the Doctor. But Peter later on gets the file, that being Nora's file, so he steals it from the lab. Security must be pretty bad. I mean, maybe they don't have a camera in the file room, but you would have thought they would have done it nowadays. He steals the file, he takes it to Nora, and it reveals that Nora did in fact have a twin sister, her name being Sarah, so they obviously work out, hey, that's the person we've seen on the film killing those patients or whoever they were. The other reveal is that Nora never had a seizure when she was young, even though she was taken to the hospital or the institution she was treated by that doctor. She never had a seizure. So there's that as well, which sort of adds to the whole conspiracy theory. So she goes to her parents and starts asking about her sister, and they come clean to her and say then Sarah died when she was 2, and it was obviously before Nora was born, or I guess Nora wouldn't have been that old herself. And they say it was of a seizure, which is obviously suspicious. And the fact that they're saying it's of a seizure, and that's what they claim Nora had, seems pretty clear. Then the practice used that as an excuse, and they used it as an excuse to maybe experiment on them. So Nora never had a seizure, and neither did Sarah. But Sarah's disappearance, I guess, they've used the seizure story as a cover because, as we know, Sarah is still alive. So it seems like the Institute kind of faked her own death. So that's the thing. So they're obviously getting closer to the truth about that. But obviously Nora was... She doesn't buy what the parents are saying about Sarah not being dead. Or being dead, sorry. And there's this sort of thing where now basically Sarah, she's motivated. She's sort of been talked into this idea then it's best to kill Nora. It's best for her own good. And the reason behind that is because... Sorry, I just got distracted by a notification. It's because, according to the bearded guy, the one she's working with, he's sort of shown her like the results of people who have been on bliss, and they've had the whole experience, and gradually they basically die. They sort of decrease and they turn into like, whatever, and they end up dying. So he's convinced Sarah it's actually best to kill your sister before she gets to that sort of stage where she's having no quality of life and it's sort of inevitable. Now, I think what's interesting about that part of the story is that could still turn out to be a trick if he has some sort of other like motivation. That, I wouldn't necessarily take that as face value. The Nora is like definitely gonna die and definitely gonna turn into one of the... I mean, who knows, that there might be a treatment for it, or it might be... it might just turn out to be him sort of manipulating her. So Sarah basically goes out on a spree. She says, I know what I've got to do. I've got to kill Nora. But she decides to kill the other bliss takers first, the ones who are at like advanced sort of stages. And so she kills this one in a wheelchair, for example, who we can see is in a really sort of bad condition, and she kills like the police like sort of like surrounding her. And there's this reaction by the two guys who sort of look like they're in like a garbage or like Pet Shop Boys video. The two like the twins, the bald headed ones, the ones that we've seen like hooked up on these big like sort of like links, and they have a reaction as the killing's taking place, and then they talk later on to one of the like superiors at this institute, and they're sort of talking about all the cases as having numbers, and I think they referred to Sarah at one point as number 5, and I couldn't make out all the dialogue. They seemed to be saying something about like upping the dosage or upping the treatment, whatever it was. And at one point the other character in the scene asks, well, should we kill them or should we kill number 5, meaning Sarah, and they say no, leave it to a bit. So they obviously have a bit more influence than we were led to believe. There's also kind of this flimsy sort of soap type plot where, and this is an example of the plot like just spinning its wheels, because this is stuff we've already figured out, but that Nora and Marie had a thing in the past. We kind of already got that. So at one point Nora sees like photographs of Marie, because she's taken there after the whole thing, but she sees photographs of her and Marie kissing, and then Peter not too subtly brings up this in it when they're at the cafe and they're debating, and yeah, it's really not too subtle. Him and Marie continue to have arguments over it and have this sort of splat. So Marie later comes clean to Nora then yeah, they did have this thing. So there's that. And the other thing is just then David and Monique start working together as an actual partnership. They're actually given that power by their superior, and at the end they start interviewing various people. There's this weird sort of comedy scene where her sort of connection at the institute. Hi, I won't be a minute, I'm just doing a video, but is starting to act really weird and sort of like backtracking on his story, and there's this hilarious sort of shower sequence when he's in the shower, and so that's the whole thing. And at the end they just talk to like her father, who happens to be a professor in science, and he sort of says how, because he's like read this sort of like encryption and the sort of the whole the meditation thing they've been using, which we've seen in scenes, and he sort of makes it clear then, or says, hey, it's a mating ritual of some kind, because of course it is. So there you have it. That's this week's Spides. I will be back next week with a review of episode 4. See how it develops. Coming up later this week on the channel, I will be reviewing the first episode of the second season of Hannah, the Amazon original. So it returns this Friday, and I liked the first season quite a bit, so I'm interested to see what they deliver this time. But look out for that later in the week. But thanks for listening. Goodbye.